What's up, world? Let me tell you about this beard growth oil I got from 12 tribes on Earth. 8 ounces of oily goodness with a nozzle that prevents sprays and spills, and soft ingredients that make it perfect addition to anyone's morning routine. From coconut to castor, all these oils are hand chosen. After using this herbal blend, the biggest thing I noticed is how soft and how strong my hair was, and how good I feel. Pick up your bottle today and make your beard the star of the show.
Shalom, family. Shalom. It just looked like Donald Trump is just getting the bad end of the stick. But see, this is what happens when you start a war and the other side can outfox you. And they're doing a hell of a job outfoxing America. So let's talk about this latest news that just surfaced. Now, we know yesterday the big thing that was in the news was all the troops and sailors going over to the Middle East. Donald Trump wants to fight to get the Straits of Hormuz opened again. Well, Iran just came up with the idea that as long as the ships coming in there pay in Chinese yuan, then they can come in with ease. They don't have to worry about anything. And they will not accept US dollars. US dollars not allowed. Now, ladies and gentlemen, for decades, trade has, for especially for oil, has always been in US dollar. It doesn't matter what nation it is. When they go to trade for oil, it's always an exchange with US money. Well, now you know why Russia and China has been meeting with their ally Iran, because this was all in the works. Remember, China and Russia are also BRIC nations. And I'm sure this has been in the works for a long time. So the petrodollar is out as far as trading for oil. That is huge. That is huge. That means China is going to be the one raking in all the dough from oil. So, oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Now, the only thing Donald Trump can do is try to threaten any nation that uses China's money, but it's not illegal for nations to do that. They can use China money if that's what they want to do. You know, they can do this. You can't tell somebody they're not allowed to have certain foreign money, because you're at war with them. But it just goes to show you America did this whole thing unplanned. They did it unplanned, y'all, and it shows. It shows. So, America, I would not be surprised if these ships are scrambling to get that money now so that they can get whatever oil they need for their countries and they can finally go home. So this is not a one-time deal, y'all. Their intent is to use the Chinese yuan permanently. Permanently, no more US dollar. So it will be interesting. I saw the stories And I'm going to show you the video. So you can find this if you go to any of the news out there, and you can Google this and you'll find the story. So, you know, boy, this is going to hurt the US big time, which means, yeah, so now the oil is going to soar even more. Oil and gas, oh, yeah, it's going to be skyrocketing big time in this country behind this. That is like unimaginable money that the US will not get anymore. All right, y'all, please give me a 1 if you can see my screen. Thank you.
Iran is coming for your savings. Iran could allow limited trade through Hormuz Strait, but only in yuan. Iran is considering allowing a limited number of oil tankers through the Strait of Hormuz if cargo is traded in Chinese yuan, according to senior Iranian official. They're coming for the dollar now. Those of you that got your savings in the USD, your money, the value is going to go like this very soon if this works out. If everybody who agrees to this deal, all the European nations who trade in dollar, everyone, all you have to do now to get free access to the Strait of Hormuz is to agree to trade in yuan, Chinese yuan. And you know China obviously is going to profit from this, and you know there's going to be a kickback to Iran. This shit is crazy. If you go to my TikTok, back up TikTok.
Y'all, the nations are going to agree to do this because Donald Trump has messed up all of the relationships with allies except for Israel. But everyone else, he's messed up all of the relationships. So now they see an opportunity to screw the US over, and you think they won't do it? Hell yeah, they gonna do it. Hell yeah, they probably fighting to go get the Chinese yuan right now. They probably running to get it now. And they, the world don't like Donald Trump. So this is a way to really stick it to Donald Trump for real. And all he can do is sit back and watch. Who's going to really be afraid of the US threat when you're doing so poorly in warfare with Iran? People are looking at that. You think they're going to be scared of you? They're not. They're not. So I'm going to definitely keep a watch on this to see how many countries actually use the China yuan to get their oil and then go back home. Definitely going to watch this one. Let's continue.
And American dominance and hegemony in the world. What else? The idiocy, the lack of foresight that Trump and his administration and the greedy oil barons that he serves and the industrial military complex has the tables turned on them. Will it work? Your guess is as good as mine. Anyways, what do you think about this? Will it work?
There's also news that Iran is considering something very weird. They're considering now to only let oil tankers through the strait if the cargo is paid in Chinese yuan, ditching the US dollar for most trades. Have you seen that?
I have. Considering,
there's something happening behind the scenes with China. They're incentivizing China to support them further.
they're
This is
either
dragging
incentivizing
China into
China
this.
to help them further, or they're just mocking the United States, knowing that that would be even more fatal than a military loss if you lost the petrodollar, and if people were able to say, I don't care, I'll take Yuan, I'll take whatever, as long as we get the oil out here. If there's enough pressure on that, I think that that would be the bigger issue. Believe me, the United States will do everything it can to prevent that from happening, even more than the combat itself. So, but if somehow that was happening, and you have to, and I won't say guarantee, but likely that the Chinese were open to that, and would certainly be happy if that happened.
This dude seemed to think the United States got all kinds of power. Let me tell you something. You can't tell a country what currency they can and cannot use. Okay. I guess it's been a certain way for these folks for so long. They think they are invincible. You're not. In order for them to make this decision, they already know they can pull this off, y'all. They already know they can pull it off. Look at how many, when Donald Trump put all those tariffs out, look how many people, there's nations now that refuse to buy US goods. If Donald Trump could do something about that, why didn't he? Why didn't Donald Trump do anything when countries start saying they would no longer buy US goods because they didn't like all those tariffs that Donald Trump put on nations around the globe? They can't move US goods anymore, y'all. So if he had so much power, why didn't he put his foot down and demand that these countries continue to buy US goods? I'm just asking questions. But according to this guy, oh, well, Donald Trump's not going to let that happen. Well, how come he let the US goods just sit and collect dust if he don't let things happen? Man, go somewhere and sit down. I think when your power is no longer there, y'all gonna crash out. Y'all gonna crash out. This guy talked like this war didn't even happen, and Donald Trump still got all this might. This war happened, and the US has fallen short. Israel has fallen short. The one that got all the might right now is Iran. So not only are they militarily kicking your ass, they are able to outfox your ass just using their brains. So you're falling short on all levels right now. And this guy is talking like, oh, well, you're going to come with our muscle. Yeah, they're going to laugh at your muscle. That's what they're going to laugh at your muscle. There are so many countries around this globe that despise Donald Trump. They'll seize this as an opportunity to cut the US off. You think they won't do that? Do you really believe they won't do that? And Donald Trump got the authority to stop them? Really? The dude is delusional. He definitely got to be MAGA. Let's go on.
Happen. But at some point we may have to get to the position where the West is going to have to say, are we going to keep letting tankers go through the Gulf that are either, regardless of what they're paying for, it's like Chinese ships going out. Iran has been sending ships out, and they're making more, at least according to the Wall Street Journal, than they had before the war started, at least up until 2 days ago. So are we going to keep letting that happen? Or are we going to finally interdict that? I mean, we've taken out Russian ships and claimed it was part of a shadow fleet or whatever. I don't know. Will we do that? Because then you have the risk of really escalating this beyond the Persian Gulf and possibly even including both Russia and or China. And this keeps getting worse. And I'm sorry, I just realized I didn't answer your question a second ago. I do have worries that a desperate Israel could resort to nuclear weapons if it drags on, a month or two or maybe 3, and you're still having this damage that you were talking about a minute ago.
Yeah.
I do worry about that taboo breaking tradition that they have established here. So this could go a lot worse. This idea it's going to be over by the end of this month. I don't even put it at 16%. I put it at none. There's no % chance of that happening. But I'd like to see them start gaming out what the percentages are as the time goes on, that this escalates beyond the Persian Gulf and outside of the current combatants. That's what I worry about.
If you want to use the Strait of Hormuz, you need to pay us in Chinese yuan, because that is the only currency that we will accept from now on. This is the offer made by the Iranian government to the rest of the world, whoever wishes to use the Strait of Hormuz. Now, on the other hand, the Russian president made a really interesting offer to the US president if he is willing to end this war. And this news is confirmed, by the way. First of all, China is telling Iran to use yuan as its centralized currency. China wants to challenge the US. China wants to end the US dollar might. These are the analyses that we are looking at on the internet, and they are very respectable analysts, by the way. I respect them personally. But I have a simple explanation that makes much more sense in my head, at least. I will share it with you. The Iranian government made this move that they will only accept Chinese yuan to save themselves from sanctions and the after effects. I will explain. When Russia-Ukraine war started, Russia had a lot of assets in Europe, in the US. They all got confiscated after they started that war against Ukraine. The Russian ruble got hit so badly that it took the Russian government some time to stabilize their own currency, yet Russia exports a lot of oil and gas. Now, let's look at Iran. Iranian government is right now under attack by the US and Israel. If the outcome is what US and Israel wants, then there will be no more Iran left. That is crystal clear. But if Iran somehow survives, then Iranian government have to face much worse sanctions than before. And because the Iranian IRGC even is considered as, actually they are labeled as a terrorist organization. So there is no chance of them doing business with Europe or the US. Now imagine in this scenario, you have to accept a payment because these ships are going through that passage, that Strait of Hormuz, and you accepting US dollar, or let's say Britain pound or Australian dollar or anything. Tomorrow, if the war ends, you cannot use these currencies because these countries have already sanctioned you. So a simple explanation over here is that this is a financial strategic move that two countries that will not abide by these sanctions are China or Russia. Now, Russian ruble is very weak compared to the Chinese yuan. Chinese yuan is very stable. That is one of the reasons that Iranian government said that we will only accept these payments, that whichever vessel will pass through the Strait of Hormuz, they have to pay a tax to the Iranian government. Now, this is not because of the war. This is how it's been happening all the time. We will only accept it in Chinese yuan. So if tomorrow the war ends, we can still use that currency for our benefit. This is my analysis. Now, let's go back to the second news. The Russian president, during his phone call with the US president, gave a really interesting offer to the US president, which he denied, by the way, that if he's willing to end this war, then Russia will transfer the enriched 200 kgs enriched uranium from Iran to Russia, which the US President Donald Trump denied. Now, this news has now been confirmed. Also, the US President said that Russia is helping Iran somehow because they think that we helped Ukraine, so they have to help Iran. Let us know in the comments what do you all think about, first of all, our analysis on this using the Chinese yuan matter, and then what is your thought on this offer that the Russian president made to transfer the 200 kgs enriched uranium from Iran to Russia? Who do you think it would have benefited the most? The US, Iran, Russia? Who do you think? Let us know in the comments, and if you have lasted this far, don't forget to follow us, drop a like. We highly appreciate that.
The war just changed, not on a battlefield, not with a missile strike or a tanker attack or a press conference from a Pentagon podium. It changed with a single sentence from a senior Iranian official to CNN on Friday. The sentence was this: Iran is considering allowing oil tankers to pass through the Strait of Hormuz on one condition. The oil must be paid for in Chinese yuan, not dollars. Yuan? Read that again slowly because the full weight of it takes a moment to land. The Strait of Hormuz, the waterway that carries 20% of the world's daily oil supply, the choke point that the entire American military campaign of the last 14 days has been unable to reopen, the passage that Trump told civilian tanker captains to show some guts and sail through. Iran is offering to crack it open. The price is not a ceasefire. The price is not a political concession. The price is a currency, specifically the abandonment of the currency that has underwritten American global power for the last 52 years. In 1974, Saudi Arabia made a deal with the United States. The deal was simple and world-altering. Saudi Arabia would price its oil exclusively in US dollars. In exchange, America would provide military protection to the kingdom. Other oil-producing nations followed. The result was the petrodollar system, a framework that ensured that any country on earth that needed to buy oil had to first acquire US dollars, which meant permanent global demand for dollars, which meant America could run deficits, borrow cheaply, and project financial power in ways no other nation could replicate. The petrodollar was not just an economic arrangement. It was the infrastructure of American hegemony, the reason America's military budget could be larger than the next 10 countries combined, the reason American sanctions hurt, the reason the world needed Washington's permission to participate in the global economy. That system was born in 1974. It has been running for 52 years. And on day 14 of this war, Iran announced it is considering ending it at the Strait of Hormuz with a sentence about when. The mechanism is surgical. Iran does not need to destroy the dollar. It does not need to defeat the American military. It does not need regime change or surrender or any of the outcomes that war normally produces. It needs to establish one precedent: that oil can flow through the world's most critical choke point in a currency other than dollars. Once that precedent exists, once the first tanker carries its cargo through Hormuz paid in Yuan and arrives safely at a Chinese port, every subsequent argument for why oil must be priced in dollars becomes harder to make. The precedent is already partially established. This is the detail that makes the Yuan announcement not a threat, but a logical next step. Since February 28th, since the first day of Operation Epic Fury, Iran has shipped at least 11.7 million barrels of crude oil through the Strait of Hormuz. Every barrel went to China. Every transaction was in Yuan. China's tankers moved freely. China's shipping was not attacked. China's oil kept flowing while every other nation's tankers sat anchored outside the strait, waiting, burning insurance costs, watching their cargo sit. The bifurcation of the strait, Yuan barrels moving, dollar barrels stopped, has already been operating for 2 weeks. The announcement on Friday was not Iran proposing something new. It was Iran codifying something that is already happening and asking whether the world wants to make it permanent. America bombed Karg Island this week, Iran's main oil export hub, the facility that handles 90% of its crude exports. Trump announced the strike as a demonstration of control. Iran's response was to resume loading tankers at the Jask terminal on the Gulf of Oman, south of the strait, bypassing the entire choke point entirely for its own exports, while keeping the choke point closed for everyone else. The military target was struck. The economic infrastructure adapted within 48 hours. And the negotiating position, the strait opens when the currency changes, remained intact throughout. The war was supposed to force the strait open. Instead, the strait is being offered back to the world on Iran's terms, in China's currency, at the price of 52 years of petrodollar architecture. Hegseth is at the podium saying war is hell. Trump is on Truth Social saying the mission is succeeding. The oil market is pricing in a world where 20% of global supply requires Yuan to access. And somewhere in Beijing, in a room that does not hold press conferences and does not issue statements, a calculation that was made years before this war began is proving correct. China did not fire a single missile in this war. China does not need to. The war is doing China's work for it. To understand what Yuan for oil actually does to the global financial system, you need to understand what the petrodollar actually does. Not in theory, but in practice, in the daily mechanics of how the world economy operates. When a country in Europe needs to buy oil from Saudi Arabia, it does not pay in euros. It converts its euros to dollars first, then pays in dollars. When a country in Asia needs to buy oil from Iraq, it converts its currency to dollars first. When a country in Africa needs to buy oil from anywhere, dollars first. This is not a preference. For the last 52 years, it has been the operational reality of global energy trade. And that reality means that every country on Earth constantly needs to hold dollar reserves. Not because they want dollars specifically, because their energy supply depends on having dollars available. That permanent structural demand for dollars is what allows America to do things no other country can do. It can run a trade deficit indefinitely without its currency collapsing because the world needs dollars regardless of what America imports. It can impose sanctions that actually hurt, because cutting a country off from the dollar system cuts it off from the ability to participate in global energy trade. It can borrow at lower interest rates than any other government, because dollar-denominated assets are always in demand. The petrodollar is not one policy among many. It is the foundation on which every other element of American global power rests. Now watch what happens when the Strait of Hormuz, the choke point for 20% of global daily oil, begins accepting Yuan. The countries that need Gulf oil start accumulating Yuan reserves instead of dollar reserves. The demand for dollars as an operational necessity decreases. As that demand decreases, the value of the dollar, supported for decades partly by this structural global demand, faces downward pressure. As the dollar weakens, the cost of America's dollar-denominated debt increases in real terms. As that cost increases, the financial architecture that allows America to maintain 800 military bases in 80 countries, to fund a defense budget larger than the next 10 nations combined, to underwrite the kind of sustained military campaign it is currently running in the Middle East. All of that becomes more expensive at exactly the moment it is already being strained by a war nobody planned properly. China has been working toward this for years. Its alternative payment system, CEPS, the cross-border interbank payment system, processed the equivalent of 245 trillion US dollars in Yuan-denominated transactions in 2025 alone. That is a 43% increase from the year before. The infrastructure for a Yuan-based global trade system is not theoretical. It is operational. It is growing. And Iran, by sitting on the choke point for 20% of global oil and announcing that Yuan is the passage condition, has just handed China the single most powerful accelerant for Yuan internationalization that any Chinese policy document could have imagined. China did not design this war, but it designed the conditions that make this outcome possible. For years, Beijing encouraged Iran to develop alternative payment channels. For years, it built CEPS as a SWIFT alternative. For years, it bought Iranian oil in yuan, establishing the bilateral precedent quietly at discount prices outside the sanctioned perimeters. And when this war began, when the strait closed, when dollar tankers stopped, when China's tankers kept moving, the infrastructure was already in place. The switch from bilateral precedent to global condition required only one sentence from one Iranian official to one CNN journalist. Russia wins too, though in a different way. Trump reversed the American ban on Russian oil imports this week, a decision that European critics immediately described as a gift to Putin, noting that the reversal was driven entirely by the desperation to replace Gulf supply that the Hormuz closure had cut off. The country America went to war partly to isolate, Russia, is now being invited back into Western energy supply chains because the alternative is economic pain that American allies cannot sustain. Iran closed the strait. America reversed Russian sanctions. The geopolitical architecture of the last decade reshuffled in 14 days. Iran is selling its own oil at discounted rates, approximately 1.22 million barrels per day flowing to China, down from 2.16 million pre-war, but still moving, still generating revenue, still funding the war machine that is shooting down American tankers and hitting Saudi air bases. The sanctions that were supposed to starve Iran into compliance are, during this war, being partially suspended by the same American administration that launched the war, because the oil crisis the war created is more immediately painful than the sanctions were designed to be. Every piece of leverage America thought it had in this conflict has bent backward. The military campaign has not collapsed Iran. The sanctions are being selectively reversed. The strait is being offered back at a price America cannot pay without destroying its own financial foundations. The Yuan announcement is not a threat. It is a bill. Here is what the petrodollar's end actually looks like. Not in the dramatic language of financial collapse, but in the quiet daily mechanics of a world that is slowly, irreversibly reorienting. A country in Southeast Asia needs to buy oil. Before this war, it called its bank, converted local currency to dollars, sent dollars to a Gulf producer, received oil. The dollar transaction was the cost of doing business, unavoidable, structural, enforced not by any written law, but by the simple fact that the Strait of Hormuz was open to dollar transactions and closed to everything else. After this war, if the Yuan for Hormuz precedent holds, that country has an option. Convert to Yuan instead, route through CEPS instead of SWIFT, pay Iran or a BRICS partner at a discounted rate, receive oil that transits Hormuz freely because the IRGC is not attacking Yuan tankers. That option did not exist before February 28, 2026. Once it exists, it does not unexist. Countries do not voluntarily return to more expensive, more restricted trade arrangements after cheaper, less restricted ones become available. The dollar's reserve currency status was never guaranteed by its intrinsic value. It was guaranteed by the fact that the alternative was worse. If the Hormuz Yuan precedent stands, if the bifurcation of the strait between freely moving yuan tankers and blocked dollar tankers becomes a permanent feature of the post-war global energy landscape, then the alternative is no longer worse. It is better for every country that is not America. Trump's administration appears to understand this, at least partially. The announcement that Trump told G7 leaders Iran is about to surrender came on the same day CNN reported the Yuan for Hormuz proposal. The timing is not coincidental. America needs Iran to surrender before the Yuan precedent becomes entrenched. Every day the strait stays Yuan only is another day the precedent deepens. Every tanker that transits Hormuz and Yuan rather than dollars is another data point proving the system works. Every country that accumulates yuan reserves to access Gulf oil is a country slightly less dependent on dollar reserves. The clock on petrodollar dominance is not infinite. It has been running since 1974, and the war that was supposed to secure American dominance in the Middle East is accelerating its end. The Red Sea compounds everything. Houthi activity in the Red Sea, Iran's proxy forces in Yemen.
Now, remember, the UN is backed by gold. The petrodollar is backed by Donald Trump's word. That's pretty much it. It's not backed by anything. So, yes, people are going to flock to the one that's backed by gold. Yeah. So, yeah, I bet Donald Trump and them are sweating now, aren't they? All right.
Iran is considering allowing a limited number of oil tankers to pass through the Strait of Hormuz on the condition that the oil cargo is traded in Chinese yuan. Iran has significantly restricted shipping traffic through the strait in recent weeks, disrupting global energy markets and raising concerns about oil supply. Under the reported plan, only a limited number of tankers would be permitted to transit the waterway, and their oil cargo would need to be settled in Chinese yuan rather than US dollars. Such a move would represent a major shift in global energy trade, where oil transactions are traditionally conducted in dollars. Any disruption in the narrow passage, which connects the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman, can have immediate effects on global oil prices and energy security. Iran has previously allowed limited exceptions to its restrictions. In recent days, a small number of vessels, including tankers bound for Asia, were permitted to pass through the strait despite the broader blockade. If implemented, the yuan-based trading condition could deepen China's role in the global oil market and further challenge the dominance of the US dollar in international energy transactions.
Boy, Donald Trump really underestimated this one, didn't he? He thought the first day Israel and the US bombed Iran, you killed their supreme leader. And then Donald Trump immediately after that started yelling ceasefire. And he really thought that would end the war. And I was reading that, not only, hearing it online, but reading it in print. He really truly believed once that supreme leader was gone, Iran would panic and run to the negotiating table. And as you can see, they are not even interested in any form of negotiation. They're not interested. And I still remember their foreign minister said they could fight this fight for the next 10 years. But no, I don't believe, because Donald Trump was all in the media. You know what I think he was trying to do? I think he was trying to push an end, figuring, oh, if I just keep saying it in media, then everything will end. No, it doesn't. Maybe in Donald Trump's fairy tale land, it works like that. But in reality, it does not work that way. And they seem very uninterested in negotiating with Donald Trump on any level. Well, y'all, our people are not involved on the political end, and I'm glad. I'm glad because when this is all said and done and people start going down for this, and folks are, they gonna go down for this. And when they do, you should not see any melanated people involved. You won't see us. And that's a beautiful thing. Noche et alter. I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong. Thank you for the super sticker and your support from my channel. And TK116, thank you for your super sticker. And I appreciate your support from my channel. Oh, yeah. Heads are going to roll when this thing is over. Absolutely. You know, the fact that Donald Trump did this without going to Congress, oh, it's all going to come. It's going to be like opening the floodgate. It is. These folks are going down. They are going down. See, all it takes is another administration to come in and they go after Donald Trump and all of his cabinet members that were involved in this thing. Yeah. I mean, they can bring them all down. But we shall see. I really think the midterms for the Republicans is completely lost. They can forget it. They can forget it. These midterms are a total loss for them. And I think Donald Trump knows it. He somehow figured if he can end this war right away, then he can save the midterms. I think it's beyond repair. I really do. So, y'all, I'm going to go ahead and conclude. This is my final live for today. So, we'll be back tomorrow on all new topics. Shalom, family.